Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 21 of Jordan and Drew, the Sports Crew. My name is Drew Skyberg. My co-host, Jordon Lawrenz, he is still on vacation. I know he was last week with our draft preview that was released. He's still partying up in Nashville. He went to a Sounds game. He went to a few museums. He even went to a show down in Nashville. So we hope we can get him back soon, but we got to get into some things here. I mean, the Clay Taylor interview last week was great. If you haven't listened to that, go ahead and listen to it. I know the draft's already happened. It was still a great preview, but later this episode, we're going to have him on to recap the draft. So stay tuned for that. And let's get into the stuff right away here. We got some news for this podcast. We have a fantasy football league. So I know a lot of our fans, they love fantasy football, and we want to include them in a league this year. So it's going to be a PPR one-year league. It's on NFL Fantasy. And if you're interested, just shoot me a message at Drew Skyberg on all the platforms. You guys know the drill there. And really, it's going to be fun, free to enter. And we're giving out a prize to the winner of the league. And we plan to have them on to interview with them about their season as well. So if you're interested, shoot me a message. And you're not going to want to miss out on the prize, let me tell you. But another thing we got is, I mean, my friends and I, we're currently doing a $5 Dynasty League. So I don't know if that interests anyone. It's where you kind of keep your team for years to come and stuff. And it's $5. It's $5 for the season. And we got 3 spots left. So if you want to shoot me a message as well, if you're interested in that league, just let me know, because I can send you the link for that, and I will get you in that league. So that's just all the news about our fantasy football stuff. But next to, you guys know the drill. Subscribe to our YouTube, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. Get us to 30 subs on YouTube. We would really, really appreciate that. And shirts is another thing. Shirts should be coming very, very soon. I mean, I was told by Jordan that they are coming possibly at the end of this week. So, I mean, just stay tuned for that. Check our Instagram out, JordanDrew_Sports Crew, because we will for sure post stuff there. And yeah, now let's get into our segments, our weekly segments here. The shout out of the week. And this is going to go to the Brewers GM and president of baseball operations. So Matt Arnold, the GM, David Stearns, the president of baseball operations, for their magnificent work they did for the deadline. We'll get into it, or I mean, I will get into it briefly in a later segment, because I am really fond of these moves. I know we saw Curtis, we saw Norris. I mean, they didn't pitch well last Saturday, but I'm not worried. And I think these guys, I think there'll be valuable pieces and assets down the end. I think these guys, like, they are valuable assets. I think what we gave up, we didn't give up much. Not really any top guys that the Brewers have. I mean, we still have Garrett Mitchell, we still have Ethan Small. Those guys were kept, and we still were able to make some moves to show, hey, we're all in this to win. So great work to those gentlemen for really putting together an excellent team. I mean, this team 63-43 as I'm recording right now on Sunday night. So props to them. But now it's time for the stats of the week. Feels so weird doing that, because usually we all know Jordan does that, but that was great to do. So first one is called hitting the century mark. So the Brewers hold a 58-42 mark through the first 100 games of the season, tied for the second best record in franchise history. 1979, they went 60-40. 1978, they went 58-42, and now in 2021, they went 58-42. And the reason we haven't seen this stat being broken by some of the great Brewer teams we've seen in recent years, so like 2018, 2011, we all know those teams just were hot at the end. They were just on fire. It's great to see this 2021 Brewer team. They don't need to make a lot. Hopefully, they don't need to make a last month push to make like the playoffs, or right now we're sitting 7 games atop the division, very comfortable lead there. And as a Brewer fan, this is great right now, because usually we are stressing right now. We are usually just thinking, what is going to happen here? Each game still matters, of course, but it's it's great to be in the lead, and that's what the Brewer fans and the Brewers themselves are feeling right now. So that's great. And here's the next stat of the week. It's also a baseball stat. The Minnesota Twins are the first team in MLB history to out-homer their opponent by 7 and lose. And also, the Detroit Tigers are the first team in MLB history to be out-homered by 7 and win. So, yeah, these two teams faced each other. So, 2 records in one game. Very exciting there. And how this happened was Detroit, they scored a bunch of runs without hitting a home run. And Minnesota, they scored all their runs exclusively basically by the long balls. So when that happens, stats like this come out and just a wacky game. It was a football score. The big joke was that the Lions beat the Vikings, blah, blah, blah. So it was funny there. But yeah, those are the 2 stats of the week. And let's move to on this day, August 2nd. Monday, August 2nd, 2021. And on this day, August 2nd, 1938, MLB has they do a first test of bright yellow baseballs during a Dodger and Cardinal doubleheader. So I had to do some deep research in this. I was like, why are we using yellow baseballs? And I found some interesting things here. So what happened here, there was a push in 1920 because a guy by the name of Ray Chapman was killed in 1920 by a pitch from Carl Mays. So there was a push that the white ball was hard to see and that maybe the yellow ball would have prevented his death. So then the yellow ball was something that they pictured would help fielders see the ball. So then what happened was they tested this ball out for a game in 1938, and the argument, like I mentioned, was it was safe for hitters, but also more visible for fielders. And what they noticed was the ball's yellow dye during the game would start to run and make the ball moist, and therefore the ball would start to die. So like fly balls would just die in the air, and they noticed this, and it was a doubleheader. So first game they used the ball, second game they didn't, and now basically the ball is a souvenir. So it had this one game where it was used, and the movement basically died out after. So that's some interesting piece of history right there. So remember, 1938 is when the yellow baseball was used. On this day in 1967, the New Orleans Saints play their first ever preseason game, and they lose to the LA Rams 16-7 at Anaheim Stadium. So preseason's fairly new then, if you look at it like that, 54 years basically. So that's an interesting piece of knowledge there. And on this day in 1982, Oakland outfielder Rickey Henderson steals his 100th MLB base of the season in a 6-5 win versus Seattle. He becomes the first to steal 100 bases twice in the modern era, so that's good to know there. In 1987, on this day, Cincinnati outfielder Eric Davis becomes the 7th player to hit 30 home runs and steal 30 bases in one season as he homers in a Reds 5-4 win versus the Giants. On this day in 2012, American swimmer Michael Phelps wins an unprecedented 3rd consecutive gold medal in the 200-meter individual medley at the London Olympics. Crazy stuff for Mr. Phelps there. And now let's get right into the weekly sports talk. So it's going to be very brief this week because we got a big draft segment coming your way in a little bit. 45 minutes, very lengthy, very good indeed. But we're going to go quick here. We're going to talk about the Brewers scores. We're going to talk about some the deadline moves that I was praising earlier, and let's get started. So we're going to talk about last week quickly. We're going to do the Brewers scores. We're going to talk about the prediction challenge, and boy, it got interesting. So let's get started here. The Brewers, so this past week, they had a very, very good week, like I predicted. They started off with an easy 3-game sweep over the Pirates, 9-0 on Monday, 7-3 on Tuesday, 12-0 on Wednesday. Or it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, my bad. And then 9-5 win over the Braves on Friday. They lost 8-1 on Saturday. They win 2-1 on Sunday, and they go 5-1 in the week. And you know what that means. Let's look at the predictions from the week prior. I predicted 5-1 like a genius. Jordan predicted 4-2. So I won the prediction challenge this week, and I got some bad news for Jordon Lawrenz, guys. It is now tied 7-7. He was up 6-1 or something in the prediction challenge. He was running away with it. And here I come roaring back. So now we're tied 7-7. So we got a chance. I got a chance to take the lead next week. So let's look at the Brewers' schedule for next week. So today they open a 3-game series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. And boy, the Brewers are probably really happy about that because they have really taken care of the Pirates this year. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 7-10 Monday and Tuesday, 1-10 Wednesday, and then off Thursday, and we have a great 3-game series coming in. The NL, best record in the NL, San Francisco Giants, come to Milwaukee to play your Milwaukee Brewers, and this is going to be a great weekend. We a bunch of promos this weekend. There's a Brewers cooler bag Saturday, which I'm going to the game Saturday, August 7th, so I'm going to get a free cooler. Sunday, they got a Christian Yelich 30-30 bobblehead for when he joined I think it was the 40-30 club actually, but that's going to be exciting there. And then also they got season ticket appreciation day on Friday, so that will be that's good for season ticket holders too. So big 3-game weekend for the Brewers, and they're not out of taking that one spot in the NL, hosting or having home field advantage throughout the whole playoffs on the NL side here. They are I believe they're 3 games back of the Giants overall, and they can really, if they go on a nice run here, if they keep playing how they're playing, basically, they could overtake that, and they could be hosting the winner of the wild card games. So I'm looking forward to that if that could happen. But that's it for the Brewers' schedule. Now we're going to talk about the deadline. We're going to talk about what the Brewers did this deadline, and I think they did some great things, as I mentioned. They really put together some great trades. They did a lot of these trades that I'm going to mention before the deadline, like a weeks before, which everyone knows May 22nd is Willy Adames Day, and rightfully so because he's really been a game changer for this Brewers team. And another trades that I'm going to talk about is like the Rowdy Tellez trade. I think that's a really underlooked trade. He's been hot lately. He had a stretch of, I believe, 8 games where he had 4 home runs, 10 hits, and he's been coming up big. But I got to talk about these trades that happened deadline day or a few days around the deadline. So what they were able to do, they were able to get guys like Eduardo Escobar, and I want to mention Eduardo Escobar first because I believe he was the biggest guy, in my opinion, they got. His numbers, he was an all-star this year. Batting average is kind of low, but we got his weighted runs created plus is above average. He's got a positive WAR this year. He can play corner outfield spots. He can play third, short, second. They used him at first on Saturday and Sunday, so that was great to see. But what this does, this gives them a lot of depth. This gives them the opportunity to send Hira down, which they did. And I like this because I know some people ask me how I thought of this trade, and the first concerns they had was what happens to Luis Arias. And I'm like, well, if we look at this here, there is an opportunity even for Luis Arias because, injuries happen. He'll still have at-bats. He's been getting at-bats, but, I know with Wong back, he's not leadoff spot anymore, so he's already lost some at-bats there, but injuries happen. We know that. Jordan, when I bashed a lot of signings that happened in the offseason, like the outfielder problem, how the outfield was so crowded, and look what happened. Kane's been injured a bunch. They needed those outfielders, and then right when Kane comes back, Yelich goes on the on the IL with COVID-19. So what happens there? You need guys. So their injuries could happen. Daniel Vogelback's out, Travis Shaw's out. Those guys are coming back, but I wouldn't be worried about Luis Arias is always what I said. I think I'm worried. I'm not really worried, but Travis Shaw, I don't think he has a spot on this team. Maybe as a bench bat, but he is not really I don't think he's gonna get that many at bats. I mean, I don't think they need him. I mean, his batting average is under 200. His strikeout rate was through the roof. He wasn't walking a lot, and just Eduardo Escobar is just a significantly better player than him, and he's even been better than Arias, which I think Arias defensively, even though the errors are high, I think he still makes some great plays. But I like this Escobar trade. We're gonna see him he's a switch hitter. We're gonna see him a lot, and he had a home run this past weekend. Just looking forward to Eduardo Escobar, and we got to move on here. I got to mention the two other trades that happened. Daniel Norris comes in from Detroit, and he was a great signing or a great trade acquisition indeed, because they gave up Reese Olson, not really a guy who's been, I mean, he's been pretty good, but not a guy who's been like really well received. But they got Daniel Norris. He's a lefty, and he's held left-handed batters to a 5.55 OPS this year, which is great. He's got a 5.89 ERA, but I think that's highly inflated. That's the expected numbers. Like his FIP is 3.78, so the ERA is a little misleading here, but he's a free agent after the year. But I think Norris, I've been preaching they need one more lefty reliever out of the bullpen. I don't like Suter I just didn't like Suter as a lefty option. I mean, obviously there's guys like Perdomo and Milner, guys who we've seen. Blaine Hardy we've even seen in this year, but like Hader and Suter and Norris, I think that's a good trio of lefties right there, and I can't be mad about that. I know Curtis and him didn't play Metro Saturday, like I mentioned, but that's the other transaction that was made. They acquired right-handed pitcher John Curtis from the Marlins for catcher prospect Peyton Henry, and Curtis, he's pitched well this year. He's got 2.48 ERA, he's got 3.21 FIP, so I mean not too far off the expected stats are, and he's got 40 strikeouts in 40 innings, so he's been good this year, and they didn't give up much. I know a lot of Brewer fans were praising this on Twitter, and rightfully so. I mean, he's been good, but this is why they're the shout out of the week. I think these are two great bullpen pieces who are really gonna just strengthen up this pen, and yeah, I think this Brewers team, they are in good shape come the postseason. So with that being said, now we're gonna head to I'm going to call it an interview, but it's just Clay and I talking and recapping the draft. So here we go to the interview. Episode 21 resumes on the podcast with our special guest, Clay Taylor. And Clay, we just watched a wonderful NBA draft yesterday as we're recording on Friday, July 30th. So Clay, I just want to hear your first thoughts right away when we get started here. How did you think the draft was?
Yeah, it certainly was an exciting draft. There were a few big surprises that took place in the lottery that I don't think that anyone was expecting. Thanks for having me on again. I'm sure that the viewers are probably getting bored of hearing my boring voice and annoying analysis. I hear, though, that you're having some better guests coming on soon, perhaps some young home run hitters at the baseball level, or the young baseball level. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, you're just a little hint there. I like it, Clay. We are, and hope you're doing well. And like you mentioned, yeah, it really was a great draft. I mean, this draft really had it all. I mean, we had a heartwarming moment at the start with Terrence Clark, the former Kentucky guard who actually sadly died in a car accident while preparing for the NBA draft. I mean, he was drafted like as the NBA drafted him, and that was just a great moment for his family to walk up there. But I thought the draft, I mean, we had some funny moments too. I know your favorite moment is listening to Kendrick Perkins announce Moses Moody. I don't know if you want to show the listeners what it sounded like.
Yeah, he didn't really know what he was saying. He said like Moody Moses. He stuttered over it for like 10 seconds, and it was not a good showing from ESPN, but it certainly got a good amount of laughter out of any viewer. So that was pretty fun. Yeah,
it really was. And this draft was the 75th edition of the NBA draft, and like we mentioned last week, it was televised on both ESPN and ABC, but the ABC actually only had the first round only, so that was the catch there. But this was, a draft right at the Barclays Center like usual, and it was, like you mentioned, I thought it was a great draft, and we're gonna get right into the picks. And I mean, not a lot of surprises in the first three, but boy, oh boy, we got a surprise at number 4. So I'm going to just quickly go through these first 3 picks because these were, if you listened to our draft preview last week, which if you have not, I mean, I know the draft happened, but if you still want to hear us talk about some of the top prospects, I recommend it. Go head over there and listen to it on any of the listening platforms that we're on. But first pick, Detroit Pistons, they go with Cade Cunningham. I mean, that's what we expected, Clay, and we got that one right at least. And then the second pick, Houston Rockets take Jalen Green. We got that one right too. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers with the third pick take Evan Mobley from USC. And now here's where we're going to start talking. We got number 4, the Toronto Raptors, Clay. They take Scotty Barnes. When you heard this pick get announced, what were your first thoughts?
I was really surprised because going into it, all of the intel that we had heard from the experts was that there were 4 players who had separated themselves from the rest of the field in this year's draft, in Cunningham, Green, Suggs, and Mobley. But Suggs ended up falling out of that group, and Scotty Barnes went ahead of him. In my opinion, it's a mistake. I have Suggs as a tier ahead of Barnes. He's my number 3 prospect, Jalen Suggs, that is, and Barnes is my 6th prospect. So I think that it was a bit of a reach to take Scotty over the Gonzaga product, but it's a pick that makes sense when it comes to what Masai Ujiri has done in the past. He has a thing for big wings that are very switchable defenders. He's taken Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby. So it makes sense with what he's done before, but it's definitely not what I would have done.
Yeah, and I know Raptor fans weren't a fan of it either, but like Jalen Suggs was the guy who we thought he could. There's a chance he could sneak up to 3 or 2. I know there were some analysts who really thought like he was like the top 3 player of the draft. So that was a shock to see Barnes go 4. But we go to number 5. The Orlando Magic fall into this great opportunity. Jalen Suggs becomes available to them, which was not something we thought was likely at the start of this draft. But hey, right when he becomes available, you know what they had to do. They had to take Jalen Suggs, and they did that. So I know you're really high on Suggs, but what do you think about this Orlando Magic team being able to get Jalen Suggs at number 5?
I think it's huge for them. They have some solid young pieces in Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz, RJ Hampton, but they really were lacking someone that had that high-level potential top 25 player in the league. And I think that Suggs brings that to them. I think that at the very least, he's going to be a solid starting point guard. He already exhibited a very high floor in his freshman season at Gonzaga, where he was a big piece of a team that made a run to the championship game, ended up losing, but still he showed that he has a winning mentality. And I just think that this is a huge pick for Orlando. It gives them a shot creator who's going to be able to be a focal point of their offense from day one. I don't think that it's going to make them good whatsoever in the early going, and they'll be one of the worst teams in the league most likely this coming season. But moving forward, I think that this is a great pick for them. And they added another really nice player at number 8 that I'm sure we'll get to pretty soon.
We sure will, Clay. And they certainly, I think they had a very great draft, which that's one of our other talking points later in the show. But number 6, here we got one of our, I know number 4 was questionable, but here we got an interesting one here. The Oklahoma City Thunder at number 6 go with Josh Giddey out of Australia, 6'8" guard, and nobody thought really he was going to go, like number 6. So this was certainly an interesting pick. He's a very elite guard, like with high basketball IQ, but and he has some potential. But Clay, what were your thoughts here? Number 6, Josh Giddey.
Yeah, to me, this is a pretty shocking pick. I had Giddey 19th on my personal big board. So obviously this was not my favorite pick of the draft. I get what Oklahoma City is doing here. He's a young guy. I think he's only 18 or 19 years old at this point, and he's exhibited some really high level playmaking upside. But I just don't see him ever becoming a starter at the NBA level, or at the very least, not an impact starter, because he's a lackluster athlete and he's also not a very good shooter. So as long as neither of those traits develop, it's really hard to see him becoming an important player on a winning team. I get what OKC is doing, but definitely not the direction I would have gone in, particularly with James Bouknight and Jonathan Kuminga on my board, two players that I had ranked well ahead of him.
So you mentioned those two guys. Do you think Alperen Şengün, do you think he was also a guy like, let's say Bouknight might have went, and you think Şengün would have been a guy to take there too?
And when we're talking about international players, I clearly had Şengün rated as the best of the cream of the crop, you could say, coming into the draft. He had terrific statistics in this past season. In the Turkish league, he won MVP. And a lot of the analytic folks who were following this draft coming in had him rated as a top 5 player. I couldn't quite get there. He was 10th on my personal big board, but definitely think he would have been a better pick than Giddey. There's debates about whether or not he's going to be an NBA ready player, because he isn't the best athlete and is kind of a center in the traditional sense, in that he plays a lot with his back to the basket, but he showcased some really interesting playmaking potential during his time in the Turkish league this past season, ranked, I believe, at the top of the league for centers when it came to assists per game. And he's also a high-level rebounder, high-level scorer. So I think that I would have for sure taken him over Giddey, maybe not quite at 6, but he definitely would have been in consideration for me.
All right. And I'm with you on that. I think Şengün over Giddey for sure. I was awfully shocked to see him go 6, but here we go. We go to pick number 7. The Golden State Warriors, they take Jonathan Kuminga. So we Scotty Barnes and Jonathan Kuminga, at least is what I felt. I felt they were always kind of grouped together as these guys who, they're both forwards, and they both were kind of like, were tall, athletic forwards, and we didn't really know like who was gonna go before who, and we see Scotty Barnes eventually went ahead of Kuminga. He went 4th, then Kuminga went 7th. So Kuminga, with the Warriors, they got some guys coming, like Klay Thompson is gonna be back, Curry, and this team, they have a shot. With some of these young guys they drafted, they had 2 top 15 picks. We'll get to the other one, but Clay, were you happy with the Kuminga pick for the Golden State Warriors?
Yeah, I was. Kuminga's not someone who's going to be able to play right away. He's maybe the most raw prospect taken in the lottery this past year, but I am pretty enamored with his upside. I think that he's got a real shot to become a high leverage starter if he can figure out his pull-up jump shot and his feel for the game on the defensive end of the court. He has great physical skills, as he's got a long wingspan. He's a big wing, and he's a terrific athlete as well, with some real explosion in the transition offense game. So if he can really click in the rest of his game, I really like Kuminga, and I think that this is right around the range he should have gone in. He was 7th on my personal big board, and I like this pick for the Warriors. Definitely gives them another future piece along with James Wiseman, their 2nd overall pick last year. And it's intriguing to see whether or not he will end up getting traded at some point, as the Warriors look to add more win now caliber players.
So for Jonathan Kuminga then, do you have a NBA player comp kind of thing for him? Do you think like a Jaylen Brown ceiling kind of thing? I know Jaylen Brown's still kind of recent, but is there any other comparisons that come to mind for you?
Yeah, Jaylen Brown definitely makes sense in terms of his athleticism. He's a little bit bigger than Jaylen and perhaps not as quick twitch. But if he improves his shooting, then that's definitely a range he could get into. If not, I could see him falling into more of the Harrison Barnes range as a big wing shot creator who just isn't quite at the same level as an all-star caliber player like Jaylen Brown. But his floor is certainly pretty low, and there's a chance he doesn't even reach those starter outcomes like a Barnes outcome would be. He could end up falling off and being the next like Josh Jackson or something like that. He's bigger than Jackson and isn't as good of a jump shooter, but there's a wide range of outcomes here with Kuminga, and I'm intrigued to see what happens with him during his time in the league.
Yeah, he's certainly got to be a guy to watch for years to come. And then we go to number 8, that pick that you mentioned right away. And here we go, the Orlando Magic with pick number 8, Franz Wagner of Michigan, a 6'9" forward, 19 only, and he's certainly got a lot of upside, doesn't he, Clay?
He does, yeah. We broke down the Magic's first pick at number 5 where they took Jalen Suggs, and I said that he could be the focal point of their offense as a high-level shot creator. Wagner can be the focal point of Orlando's defense. He's one of the best help defenders in this entire draft class. He has excellent instincts and does a great job of anticipating what the offense is going to do, is constantly in the right position and can function as a weak side rim protector in a similar way that Giannis did. He's not quite as explosive athletically, but in terms of being in the right spot at the right time, Wagner is as good as anyone else in this class. On offense, he's got some work to do with his jump shot, but if that comes around, he's got a chance to be an excellent high leverage starter because of his playmaking. He already was a primary initiator for Michigan last season, and while I don't think he'll be able to do that at the NBA level, he definitely is an interesting complementary piece to Suggs moving forward with his high-level passing and off-ball defense. I think that Orlando had a great draft, as we'll get into a bit later, but this is a really, really nice pick for the Magic.
Yeah, and a guy who I know you respect, and now I really respect, because, I mean, you told me great things that he said, and I'm starting to read and some of the great things he said. Sam Vecini kind of compares him to Robert Covington defensively, and I think that's definitely some praise right there. Like, if he has the potential to become a guy like that, I mean, that'd be big for this Magic team.
Absolutely.
So we're going to go now to pick number 9 here, the Sacramento Kings. This was an interesting one, I thought, too. Davion Mitchell, a 6'3" guard from Baylor. And Clay, I know you weren't a big Davion Mitchell fan. I know you liked his teammate a lot better, but Davion Mitchell goes to the Kings at 9.
Yeah, my thing with Davion Mitchell is that he's already 22, so there's not a whole lot of upside here. And in addition to that, I don't really trust the jump shot. So you're basically getting like an on-ball hound defender who can attack the basket a bit. He's not a great foul drawer, so there's not much upside there either. But in general, I don't see Mitchell as a potential high-leverage starter, which is definitely what you're looking for with the 9th pick. In addition to that, he doesn't really fit real well with the Kings roster because they already have 2 starting caliber point guards in De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton. So, well, Mitchell is someone who is thought of quite highly by a lot of people coming in. This is not a pick that makes a whole lot of sense, particular to me as I'm lower on Mitchell than the general consensus. But overall, just a very, very strange pick. And pretty much what you would expect from the Kings is this is one of the most interesting, not so good run franchises over the past couple of years in American sports.
Yeah, I mean, you're certainly right about that. And yeah, maybe what I'm thinking, possibly, maybe they thought Davion Mitchell was best available. Maybe they went with their strategy of drafting best available. So that's possibly, but like, it's certainly one of the most confusing picks of this draft. And here's pick number 10. Then we got Zaire Williams, and then this ended up being Memphis's pick, right?
Yep, they traded. In the Jonas Valanciunas, Eric Bledsoe, Steven Adams trade, they got the 10th pick and the Pelicans got the 17th pick. That came in last Monday, so it took effect in the draft. But right here at 10, we've got Memphis taking Zaire out of Stanford, and Zaire was not very good this past season for the Cardinal, but he definitely does have a whole lot of upside. He's a huge project, but that's good for Memphis as they have a lot of quality rotation pieces, and they didn't need someone who is going to have to play for them right away. Instead, they can be patient with Williams' develop, let him spend some time with the Memphis Hustle, their G League affiliate, and let him grow into the big wing shot creator that he certainly has the potential to be. He's, I think, 6'9" and has a long wingspan, and that just those intriguing physical attributes make him a worthwhile pick here. It's not what I would have done, as I think that James Bouknight was the best player available, but I definitely can understand where Memphis is coming from.
I was just about to mention that. I mean, James Bouknight at number 10 still available and not taken. So here comes number 11 pick by the Charlotte Hornets. They see James Bouknight and they're like, how is this guy still in here? We got to take him. So we see James Bouknight go 11, 6'5" wing from UConn. And I mean, I watched him play in the Big East, and boy, oh boy, he can score. So
Yeah, I'm a big Book Knight fan. I had him fifth on my personal big board, and I thought that he should have been in play as early as the sixth pick for the Thunder. Obviously, he did not end up going that high. He ended up falling here to 11, where Charlotte was happy to snatch him up. I think he forms a really intriguing backcourt with LaMelo Ball moving forward. Probably won't start right away, as Terry Rozier and potentially Devontae Graham are roadblocks for him there. But long term, I really like Book Knight's potential. He pairs nicely with Lonzo, as he's paired up with someone who's one of the best passers in the NBA. So he's going to be able to focus on scoring, which is where he's most gifted. And they also both have a decent amount of defensive potential, as both Ball and Book Knight have decent amount of size for their positions. So this is a pick that I love for the Hornets, and I think we'll talk about it a bit more a little later on.
I think we certainly will too. And I like the point you brought up with LaMelo Ball. I think with him and Book Knight, I think with LaMelo being such an elite passer, I think that's really going to help him out with getting some quality looks to really, get him jump started for his rookie year. And pick number 12, Clay, we're going to go to this pick by the Spurs. This was I'm not sure what was going on here for San Antonio, but Joshua Primo, 6'6" guard, 18 years old, out of Alabama. He wasn't ranked high on many people's boards at all. And one thing that he had going for him, I mean, he was the youngest player in the draft. But Clay, was this a great pick?
Yeah, this is definitely the most shocking pick of the draft. I didn't see anyone who had Primo inside their top 20. To see him jump all the way into the late lottery at 12 for the Spurs was just pretty mind-blowing. It's definitely not the pick I would have gone with, because Primo is a project, as we talked about before with Williams, but he just doesn't have the same amount of upside since he's a bit smaller at 6'5" with a 6'9" wingspan. He shot the ball really well this past season at Alabama, knocking down around 38% of his three-pointers. But to me, that's about his only NBA-ready skill. He's got potential defensively because of his size and length. And if he can continue to add to his frame and get stronger, he could genuinely be a plus defender in the NBA. However, that's going to take some time. And when you consider that he's also not much of a shot creator and is pretty much just a floor spacer on offense, this is a project pick that I can't get behind inside the top 25. And considering the Spurs went even higher and took him at 12, one of the worst picks of the draft, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned projects. I think this might be one of the biggest projects in the draft by far, especially considering the age and just the skill set. But we're going to go to pick number 13 by the Indiana Pacers, and I like this pick. Chris Duarte out of Oregon. I mean, 24 years old, like one of the oldest players in the draft. So we go from youngest to oldest right away. But at Oregon, he can play. He played some great defense in the tournament. I think he was Pac-12 Player of the Year as well. So there's some upside there. And I think this guy could be a solid guard for the Pacers in the future to come.
Yeah, Duarte is fantastic. He's a good shooter in a variety of ways, can knock it down off the bounce, off the catch, off of movement. He also can attack the basket. He's not a great passer, which limits him from really having star level upside, but I definitely see him as someone who could potentially be a starter by the end of his rookie contract. In addition to that, he has solid defensive tools and great instincts. Similar to Franz Wagner, he's a really good help defender, doesn't quite have the same physical tools as Wagner does. He still has solid length with his wingspan, but not the 7-foot plus wingspan that Franz has. Even with that being said, Duarte can still be impactful as a help defender and just a genuinely good starting wing at some point in his NBA career. I like Duarte as a person as well, as every interview I've seen with him has been fantastic. He's clearly a high character guy, and he's also a dad, so that definitely earns him a plus in my book. Big fan of Duarte, and I think that this is a really solid pick from the Pacers, despite him being an older player. That's not usually something that I like, as it's much less likely that you're going to end up having a quality player in the lottery if they are above the age of 22. But in this case, I can get behind it because Duarte is just such a good player right off the rip.
Yeah, certainly. And I think some of the analysts saw them draft a guy, Chris Duarte, and they're like, well, if you want to draft a guy kind of with some 3-and-D ability, why wouldn't you just take Moses Moody? So, and eventually then the next pick, with the 14th pick, the Warriors then took Moses Moody. So, I mean, we saw two 3-and-D wings go back-to-back here, and this time Moses Moody, 18 years old, and he's out of Arkansas. So we see a guy 6 years younger who with a similar skill set here. And I know you like Moody, and I think he is the chance to become a really great player for this Warriors team, even though he might be a project.
Yeah, I'm a big Moody fan. I had him 9th on my personal big board, so I would have taken him over Duarte, who I had 18th. I think that Moody's got a chance to really blossom into an elite caliber role player. He is a knockdown shooter. He was just 35% this past season at Arkansas, but that's because a lot of his shots were really challenging, a lot of off the dribble stuff. And once he comes into an NBA environment and is taking more catch and shoot looks, especially looks generated by players that have as much gravity as Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, I think we'll see that shooting percentage skyrocket. And he also has some really good defensive tools, has an impressive 7'1" wingspan. So a really nice pick for the Warriors here, banking on the combination of Moody's ability to play now because of his skills and his upside because of his age and frame. So one of the better picks of the draft here from the Warriors, and definitely one that I'm a big fan of.
So would you think that like Moody could make a more like a quicker impact to this team right now than Jonathan Kuminga, the guy they took 7 spots ahead?
Yeah, I would. I don't think that either of these two players is going to be able to be a starter level player right away, but coming off the end of your bench, I definitely think Moody could help because he has a pro level skill right away with his shooting. Kuminga doesn't really have anything that he does at an NBA caliber yet. He does have more long-term upside, but as of right now, I think Moody's the more useful player.
All right, and then we go to 15. I mean, the Washington Wizards then have a pick here, and they took a guy who we said was going to go probably in the mid-first round, maybe a little later, but like in the 20s. But Corey Kispert from Gonzaga, he finally gets drafted here, 6'7" wing, 22 years old, and he was a senior this past year. And I mean, when you talk shooting, you're talking Corey Kispert.
Yeah, he's probably one of the 2 best movement shooters in this draft, along with Iowa's Joe Wieskamp. Kispert is so good at knocking down those shots. And I think that at the NBA level, where he's put into a scheme where his coach is going to be running plenty of pin down looks for him, he's going to end up being a real offensive weapon, probably right away in his rookie season. It's also very interesting that he went to the Wizards, who had just traded Russell Westbrook. In exchange for that, they brought back another pick, which they would eventually turn into Isaiah Todd. So they have some intriguing young pieces here with Todd, Kispert, Deni Avdija, and Rui Hashimura. And I'm just kind of intrigued to see where the Wizards go from here, especially when you consider that Bradley Beal could potentially ask out, although at this point that appears unlikely.
Yeah, this team's got a lot of shooting now with Beal, Kispert, and Bertans, and so that's quite the trio just right there of scoring and shooting. But what I find crazy here is John Hollinger for these last 8 picks. So like he was very high on Şengün, and he would have taken Şengün with all those last 8 picks over the guys that were taken. But here we go to number 16, which the pick by the Thunder, which was traded to the Rockets. His man finally gets taken. Alperen Şengün, a 6'10" big, gets taken. And this was the guy who we've mentioned multiple times, international prospect, arguably the best one over Giddey. And I think he's going to be a great guy, a great player for the Rockets. I mean, he'll pair well with Jalen Green, and right now the Rockets, I mean, with Harden gone, they got to rebuild, and they got some promising guys here already with Christian Wood. But I think this was a great pick for the Houston Rockets.
I completely agree. In my opinion, the Rockets were the single biggest winner of this year's draft. They took Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, and Usman Garuba over the course of the night, as well as Josh Christopher. Those are players that I had 2nd, 10th, 16th, and 32nd on my big board. So obviously they're bringing in a ton of talent, and they're all guys that I liked more than where they were taken. So this was an excellent draft for Houston. They bring in some key players to add to their core. Şengün gives them a really intriguing big man who's going to be able to operate inside at a high level and has the potential to turn into a Domantas Sabonis level shot creator from the center position. In Jalen Green, they're getting one of the biggest upside players in the draft, probably second to only Cade Cunningham. And if he makes everything click, you're bringing in someone who's probably going to be a top 5 shooting guard in the game and making all NBA teams. Then they added Usman Garuba. Garuba has a case as the best defender in this draft class. He's great and versatile, can play in a variety of pick and roll schemes, whether that's the drop, switching, hedging. He can do it all. And they brought in this guy as well as someone in green who has high upside, and Şengün, who is the mystery of the class, but definitely has a chance to become a high-level starter. A great draft for the Rockets, and one that I absolutely am a huge fan of. Drew, what did you think of the Rockets draft?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned winners and losers because Rockets were my first winner as well, Clay. I mean, getting Jalen Green and then being able to have Şengün fall in your hands and yet get Usman Garuba as well out of Spain. I thought this was a great pick. I mean, great picks for them. I mean, we mentioned Josh Christopher as well was a great pick, and I think this Rockets team, they're doing everything right so far in this rebuild. I mean, they got some draft capital and they made the most of it. They really did. But my other winners, Clay, I'm going to read my 2 other ones I got. I got the Detroit Pistons for just having the opportunity to draft Cade Cunningham and taking advantage of it, and the Orlando Magic. But I want to go back quickly on the Pistons before I go to we go back to the Magic, but they had that offer we mentioned, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the 6th overall pick for the number 1 overall pick. So I mean, I'm still shocked that they didn't take that.
Yeah, in the rumor mills, that was definitely one we were hearing a lot about. I'm not sure if it was actually on the table, but if it was, I probably would have taken it if I were Pistons general manager Troy Weaver. Obviously, he either declined the trade offer or it simply didn't actually happen and was concocted by some media members. But either way, they ended up pulling the trigger, and they have taken Cade Cunningham with the first pick. I am a huge fan of this. I had Cunningham as the clear number 1 player on my board, the only player with real superstar upside in this draft class. He's a high-level shot creator, can knock down jumpers, can get to the rim, can find teammates, and is a high-level shot creator off of his playmaking. On defense, he's switchable, can guard multiple positions, is a great help defender with great defensive instincts. I think he fits perfectly into the Pistons, especially with what they want to do on the defensive end of the court. They can now run out a lineup of Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, and Jeremy Grant. Those are 5 switchable defenders that are going to be an absolute menace for opposing offenses to deal with. In addition to that, they have 5 players who can shoot the ball at a pretty decent level, and all 5 of those guys are up-and-coming players who have a lot of room to grow still. This is one of the best rebuilds in the NBA right now, and it's so exciting that they were able to add Cade Cunningham because I think that he's really the straw that can make I never mind. I forget how that saying goes, but I think that this is a great pick. I think that he is the perfect player for them to add, and I'm really excited to see where they go from here.
Yeah, I think the Pistons, this might be one of the best Pistons teams we've seen in a few years, and I'm just talking for the aspect of the Bucks. I mean, usually when they play the Pistons, it's been a cakewalk, but now they're starting to generate some decent pieces. So, and then the other winner we both had, I believe, the Orlando Magic. I mean, when you're able to get Jalen Suggs at number 5 and you're able to get a guy like Franz Wagner at 8, which you're high in both of those guys, and I understand why. I mean, this rebuild in Orlando done by John Hammond is not too shabby at all either.
No, it's certainly not. The Magic are another team that have a very strong defensive identity built up. Already coming in, they had some high-level defenders in their young players. Guys like Jonathan Isaac, Chuma Okeke, Markelle Fultz are all very high-level defensive players who can guard their position at a very high level. They have now added someone who's going to be their primary option on offense in Jalen Suggs and is also one of the best on-ball defenders in this draft class. I compare him at times to Drew Holiday in terms of what he can do on the ball, and I think he gave a quote following being selected that watching the Bucks play in the playoffs inspired him to improve his defense even further. So very, very intriguing player there in Suggs, who I had 3rd on my board. They also added Wagner, who continues to add to that defensive identity. So very, very excited for this Magic team. And honestly, all the rebuilding teams did quite well, with the exception of the Oklahoma City Thunder, whose draft was one of the worst, in my opinion.
Yep, and we're talking about losers right now, Clay, and we're gonna talk about two losers only. You got to pick two, which I think that works well with us. But the first one, the OKC Thunder, taking Josh Giddey 6th overall. I mean, hopefully we're wrong about this, but I think there was a lot of better guys to take at number 6. And I mean, Bouknight, just throwing out some names there. Bouknight was a guy who certainly would have fit their system there at number 6. But hey, they go with Josh Giddey, and they were certainly one of the losers in my opinion.
Yeah, and we talked about Giddey quite extensively earlier, or at least I did. Sorry, I didn't let you get a word in before, Drew, but you gave your piece on Giddey just now. Anyways, aside from that 6th pick, I didn't really like what they did the rest of the draft either. With the 18th pick, they took Trey Mann out of Florida. Mann was someone that I had 40th on my personal board. So that was a pick that I disagreed with. He does have some potential as a pull-up jump shooter, but I don't think that he's ever going to make it click on defense or as a playmaker. So that was a definite reach, in my opinion. Along with that, they took Jeremiah Robinson-Earl with the 32nd pick. Robinson-Earl plays really hard, was a good player in the Big East last season, winning co-Big East Player of the Year with another guy that we're going to talk about very soon. But I don't think that he offers the upside necessary to be taken at the beginning of the 2nd round. And overall, don't think that the Sam Presti and the Thunder did very well in this draft.
Yeah, certainly, Clay. And the other loser we have, I mean, we mentioned their pick already as well, the San Antonio Spurs. They took Joshua Primo at number 12, who was a guy who we thought could have been end of 1st round. And I think that was just a shock to me. That really was. That was what we mentioned, one of the most shocking picks in the draft. And they could have taken other starter guards. They could have took some of those 3-and-D guys we mentioned in Duarte and Moody. And there's some other guys better who I know you were really high on, and like in the 2nd round even that were drafted, and guys like Dosunmu and like Wieskamp, and just not a good pick.
Yeah, I don't love it. Obviously, it's not one that you can judge right away because he's a project. It's going to take time for him to develop, and perhaps he can reach his upside. But as of right now, it definitely appears that there were better players on the board. So definitely one of the losers of the draft, in my opinion, and obviously in yours as well.
Yeah, so now we're going to switch some gears here, Clay. We're going to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. What did they do on draft night? And Clay, I felt terrible for the Bucks believer yourself because you spent all these hours putting together a fantastic video. If you have not checked it out yet, still check it out. I don't care that the draft's over. It's a 27-minute video that Clay Taylor did about the draft, and it did great for his channel, and it was just an overall great breakdown of guys who the Bucks could draft. But the reason it was just they traded the draft pick, so that 31st pick, no more. So Clay, all of that time he put in those draft and to look at who they could take 31st, well, it didn't happen. So I felt bad for you, Clay, there.
Yeah, that was a definite bummer, but they still ended up making some selections. On draft night, they traded the 31st pick to the Indiana Pacers for the 54th pick, the 60th pick, and 2 second-round picks in the future, one in 2024 and one in 2026. With that 54th pick, they ended up taking Sandro Mamukelashvili from Seton Hall, and with the 60th pick, they put Yorgos Kalaitzakis. We practiced saying this so much before, Drew, and I'm pretty sure I just messed it up anyway.
No, you did good.
Okay. I'm glad. And he's a Greek guy who has the same agent as Giannis Antetokounmpo, which would be Alex Saratzis from Octagon. So a definite Milwaukee Bucks connection right there. But these are 2 intriguing picks to me. Drew, which one of these 2 gets you most interested?
So, this is a Marquette podcast here, Jordan and Drew, the sports crew. We love the Golden Eagles, and I've seen Sandro Mamukelashvili play for years, and he's a Marquette killer. His job, when he goes against Marquette, he just tries to exploit their defense. He does a great job. I mean, because what he does, he lights it up shooting, and then he starts to get guys close out on him, he gets a lot of attention. So what happens then is he's an excellent passer too. At 6'11", he's really able to just get what he wants, and he's got a really good feel for the game, and you can really tell watching him play. So I'm high on him, and I know we were talking before we recorded about Yorgos Kalaitzakis. There it is. And we were talking about him, and you think he's kind of a stash player, right?
Yeah, he's a player who obviously has a Greek passport since he was playing there this past year, and also is under contract with the team, if I'm not mistaken. So the Bucks do have the option to keep him playing in Greece for the next season or two, and then once he's more NBA ready, they can bring him over and have him join the roster. So I would agree with what you just said there about Sandro. He is definitively the better prospect, in my opinion. And he was very intriguing to me when I watched a little bit of his tape. He clearly is a very good playmaker from the center position. Last season, he posted an assist rate better than 20%, which is extremely good for someone who's playing the five. And if he can bring that over to the Bucks, he would add a new element to their offense that they don't really have at this point from the center position, as neither Brook Lopez nor Bobby Portis are extremely high-level passers with good feel for the game. In addition to that passing, Mamukelashvili shot 33.9% from three over his career, so he could space the floor out from the five for Giannis as well. The struggles with him come on defense. He's not a great rim protector, and he also doesn't move his feet very well. So I'm not sure if he'll be able to guard on the perimeter or inside, but if he can make that defense click, he's got a chance to be a very nice bench player for the Bucks because of his offensive feel.
I do agree there, Clay. And I'm just to wrap this up before we do our trivia, I'm going to read some other notable picks that occurred through the draft, and I'm going to ask you about who's the guy who stood up for you no matter what pick it was. So number 20, Jalen Johnson went to the Hawks. So we know him from Nicolay High School down by Milwaukee.
Native.
Yeah, Wisconsin native, of course. And then number 25, a guy we mentioned in our preview, Quentin Grimes, went to the Knicks. So that was a pick there. And then we got Jeremiah Robinson Earl, JRE from Nova. He went to OKC. And then Miles McBride, a guy who we also mentioned, went to the Knicks at 36. Ayo Dosunmu went to the Chicago Bulls with the 38th pick. Jared Butler went 40th to – did he go to Utah?
Yep.
Okay. And then Joe Wieskamp went to the Spurs at 41. Luka Garza went 52. And then we got one more guy I want to mention. Aaron Wiggins from Maryland went to – did he go to Denver? Is that what – or no, he went to OKC, right?
Yeah, he went to OKC.
Okay, he went to OKC. There we go. So those are the final guys I wanted to mention there. And now it's time for trivia. So Clay Taylor, for the first time ever on Jordan and Drew, the Sports Crew, is participating in trivia. We got some NBA draft stuff. It starts off easy. It gets a little hard. I got some over-unders for him. It's a tough one. So we're going to get started right away. Clay, 10 questions. Here we go. First question. Who was the first overall pick?
Cade Cunningham. Move along.
Who was the second overall pick?
Jalen Green.
Who was the third overall pick?
Evan Mobley.
All right, that was a quick 3 for 3 for Clay Taylor. Now here we go. Who will be drafted first? Jonathan Kuminga or Scotty Barnes?
Scotty Barnes.
Correct. Davion Mitchell's draft position, was it over 8.5 or under 8.5?
It was over by half a pick.
There it was. Franz Wagner's draft position, over 9.5 or under 9.5?
Under.
Yep. Here, okay. You're on a roll. 6 for 6. Now, here's where we get tough, Clay. How many players from non-NCAA teams were drafted in the top 10? Over 2.5 or under 2.5?
Over.
Over is correct.
Yes. The G League guys like Josh Giddey.
Number of players drafted in the first round from the Southeastern Conference. Over 7.5 or under 7.5?
Primo, Moody. I think it was under.
Under is correct.
Yes. Was it 6?
I don't have the numbers here right now, but
okay.
it was under, so that's all that matters. We got 2 more. Number of players drafted in the first round from the Big 12 Conference. Over 3.5 or under 3.5?
So you've got Davian Mitchell, you've got Kai Jones, you've got Cade Cunningham. I think that was it. Oh, am I forgetting someone? I don't think so. I'm going to say under.
Under is correct.
Yes.
9 for 9. One. Here we go. Number of players drafted in the first round from the Pac-12 Conference. Over 2.5 or under 2.5?
Okay. Josh Christopher, Chris Duarte, Evan Mobley. So it's at least 3. I might have missed one, but I'm going to say it's over 2.5, right?
Clay goes 10 for 10 in NBA draft trivia. Congratulations, Clay. I know we started really, really easy with those first few picks, but I knew those conference ones might be a little tough, and I'm really glad you got the 10 for 10. Congratulations.
I had to think on those ones. I if I'm being honest, the Pac-12 one where it was over, or no, that was the SEC. It was over under 7.5. I just kind of guessed on that one because it would have taken me a long time to think through it. But oh man, I'm glad I did well.
And I'm glad too. I mean, you know these draft prospects, and you watch the draft yourself. And congrats, Clay, on your 10 for 10 for trivia. It was fun talking a lot of draft notes with you today.
Drew, I got a quick trivia question for you.
Okay, let's go.
Who was the 15th pick in the 2013 NBA draft?
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Woo!
Yeah, that was certainly a great pick for the Bucks. And yeah, I mean, the 2013 draft's actually turning itself around. I mean, some of those guys, it was considered a horrible class at first, but I mean, with Giannis now, of course, it's got to be better. But
Rudy Gobert went at the end of the first round, so that's
27
NBA guys that were outside the lottery that ended up popping off. So definitely a better class than people thought at first.
Certainly. And Clay, I mean, I appreciate you coming on, filling in for the great Jordon Lawrenz as he's out in Nashville partying it up still. But so for the schedule now, guys, for the rest of the week, we'll either have the Summer Sports Spectacular episode 10. It'll either come Wednesday, August 4th or Friday, August 6th. So that'll be great there. And the final thing is the EWC football special will be coming out awfully soon. I'm just going to go check the calendar quickly to let you guys know. Robert Shimmick's coming on for it. It should be coming out Monday, August 16th. So mark that on your calendars. You will have an EWC football preview with Drew Skyberg and Robert Shimmick.
Can't wait.
Yep. I appreciate it, Clay. I really hope it's going to be a great episode, I think. So it's always fun to have Robert on to talk some EWC sports. And it's always fun to have you on. So, Clay, you want to shout yourself out?
Sure. Find me on YouTube. I'm the Bucks Believer. I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed and checked out a few of my videos, because as we get further and further into it, I've been putting more and more time in. So it's been a lot of fun, though. I love making YouTube videos, and I love that almost as much as I love coming on Jordan and Drew. It's truly a pleasure to be on, Drew. Hopefully I can come on again soon, maybe next season for the Bucks. We can talk about some title defense, perhaps. We can hope. So thanks for having me on, and it was a lot of fun, as always.
Yeah, really. I totally agree, Clay. It was fun to have you on. And then my socials, Drew Skyberg, DREWSKYBERG on all platforms. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you all for listening to another episode of Jordan and Drew, the Sports Crew, the perfect podcast for you.